simple fact. Africa is growing. This is true for its economy, with the successive growth recorded since the early 2000s. It is also true for its population, particularly in its relations to youth. By 2050, Africa will be home to 38 out of 40 youngest countries in the world. And as a European, I shall acknowledge that Europe's hair will be a lot grayer than its African counterpart by then. This growth presents a great opportunity. It could lead to the eradication of poverty and an improvement in livelihoods. But for this to happen, growth must be inclusive and it must be sustained. Industrialization has the potential to drive this kind of growth.
Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, the African continent has over the past 2 decades witnessed significant changes in policy orientation, with more emphasis placed on building productive capacities in order to take advantage of opportunities emerging from the global economy. Many African countries have restructured their economies and have embraced liberal economics and trade policies to support their development strategies. However, these reforms have come with their own challenges, including the influx of imported commodities and, unfortunately, closure of industries with consequential job losses.
Especially lack of skill is the major problem in Africa. With an integrated industrial strategy, African states could hopefully mobilize funds, build the capacity of local firms, and promote small, medium enterprises like with domestic development projects.
Let me stress that the enhanced success in agro-processing would progressively transform Africa from being a net importer of food to a net exporter. Currently, Africa's food import bill stands at $35 billion per annum. I'm sure you agree with me, Your Excellencies, that agro-processing and other aspects of industrialization will over time greatly contribute to generation of decent jobs and in the process lead to poverty reduction and human development on the African continent. We are planning to make the Continental Free Trade Area more attractive by coming up, beginning in 2018, with annexures to the legal text that will deal with issues of competition, intellectual property rights, and investment. With a large and attractive market and a growing middle class, we expect increased African and foreign direct investment in textiles, electronic and other consumer goods, and interior manufacture or assembly of motor vehicles.
Since the turn of the century, much of Africa has achieved impressive economic growth. 16 African countries were among the world's top 30 fastest growing nations, and last year alone, the 10 fastest growing African economies posted GDP growth rates exceeding 5%. On the flip side, continued commodity dependence, coupled with fluctuations in commodity prices, makes African economies vulnerable and hampers their ability to create decent jobs and effectively tackle poverty. Hence the need for African countries to take further action to advance inclusive and sustainable industrial development. This is the reason behind the proclamation by the General Assembly last year for the third industrial development decade for Africa.
We obviously are committed to the program of action, including the theme as pronounced today, and we will work tirelessly to help ourselves and Africa attain that.
It is high time to move IDDA3 agenda steadily forward in order to foster inclusive and sustainable industrialization in Africa. Today's presence of the high-level participants from public and private sectors, development financial institutions, and the United Nations system and bilateral, multilateral institutions confirm that Africa's industrialization is of great importance to international community.
And working together with UNIDO and other partners, we can all develop the industrialization that we need, because it has so many advantages. It has the backward linkage, it helps in terms of the value chains in the country and also in the region, and it benefits so many other stakeholders. It also benefits the agriculture sector. You can imagine agriculture without the processing part of it, what you get out of that. So that one is very, very serious. This is what can help in terms of increasing our balance of payments, especially the exports, and also creating the jobs that we need. It adds value, and this is what can create, of course, the wealth that we need, and also attracts the FDI that we've been talking about.
Without the successful implementation of IDDA3, there is no way, and I stand bold to say this, there is absolutely no way that the world is going to meet the SDG goals. I've been involved in this, I've looked at it, it's impossible. Africa must industrialize if we're going to make it. Now, it's not the role of the world to sort Africa out. It's our responsibility and it's our role to make sure that we do that ourselves. So it is time that we understood very well that our responsibility to the world is that we must get it right if the world will be all right.
FAO is a partner of UNIDO in this effort to implement the third industrial development decade for Africa. We believe that agro-industry development is an important component of this strategy. Investing in agro-industry can not only boost agriculture production, but also address all other components of the food system, such as processing, packaging, transporting, marketing, and final consumption. We can't have a modern agriculture sector in Africa without having an agro-industrial sector.
What we are now doing is saying, can we move to producing goods that are also exported and traded in Asia? And that is where the industrialization part comes in. That's the important word, the industrialization, is you're now selling something that is slightly processed, that's slightly improved. Instead of selling raw cotton, you're selling clothes. Instead of sending rubber, you're sending shoes. Instead of sending raw bananas, you're sending juices or creams. So that is the story, is we're going from raw materials to something that is more processed, that is more value added, is more expensive, so the person that is producing it gets a lot more in return.
We, for example, continue hosting delegations of Ethiopian businessmen who have been trained through our programs, many of them in collaboration with UNIDO, to come and visit Italy, develop joint ventures with Italian companies, and really grow together that particular segments of the industrial activities. So we really see a lot of very promising opportunities for both Italian businessmen and Ethiopian businessmen to grow together.
As a young person from Africa, I feel that the amount of capitalization we've been doing on young people's capacity has been insufficient or incapable of driving that as a growth engine. And for a long time, young people were looked at as a problem that needs to be solved, rather than being looked at as a capacity or a force to be harnessed to create or become a growth engine for society and for economies.
We are grateful that we are here in partnership with UNIDO and UNECA. As you know, maybe the African Development Bank has launched the industrialization strategy of Africa. It's a 10-year strategy that will require the bank to invest about $30 billion over the 10-year period, but also leverage its capital to raise an additional $30 to $50 billion from the private sector, institutional investors, and also from other development, partners. We are pleased and privileged to be here. We are happy to work with UNIDO and everybody to move from political vision and decision to concrete action on the ground.
IDDA3 is an ambitious undertaking, and today's event gives us an opportunity to reflect on the ways in which we can transform the political commitment and to the embedded in the resolution into a tangible, concrete actions. These actions should benefit African economies by establishing their trajectory towards inclusive and sustainable industrial development, in which prosperity is shared by all.
My government is proud to be associated with this event and values the role played by organizations such as UNIDO and other development partners which seek to work closely with Africa to promote inclusive and sustainable industrial development on the continent.